Man, so how many of you guys remember Y2K? That was weird. Outside of Y2K standing for the year 2000, it was an event that didn't actually happen where we all thought the world was going to end because computers only had 2 digits for the years instead of four. And so we thought that all these newfangled computers were just going to fall apart and the world was going to burn to the ground, but it never happened. And the movie Y2K asks the question, but what if it actually did? And while the movie Y2K asks the question, what if the Y2K event actually happened, what I asked instantly when I saw this trailer was, can we fully and properly capture the feeling and the vibe of the year 2000 in a film in the year 2024? And I've seen the movie and I'm here to let you know my thoughts. Now, if anybody knows 80s, 90s, and 2000s nostalgia, it's me, because if you know Criticless.com, then you know that I love the time period and everything surrounding all of those years because I have the most nostalgic website ever. So make sure to visit Criticless.com. We're an entertainment reviewing platform for reviewing movies and television shows, but we are a whole lot more than that. I've mentioned before, we are a social experience. And make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. But moving on into Y2K, the new film by A24, I was optimistically excited for this movie after seeing the trailer simply because I love the time period, I love nostalgic things, and I was just really interested to see if they could pull off a comedy sci-fi horror in this day and age that actually worked and was any good. Now, I didn't do a whole lot of research into it. I only saw a very small bit of the trailer because I didn't want the movie spoiled, but this movie is actually pulling in some fairly larger, younger stars, and then some people from the latter years as well. We've got Jaden Martell, who was actually in the recent It films, and we've got Rachel Zegler, and we all know about her.
Weird. I'm a narcissist.
They managed to also snag up Julian Dennison, who was from Hunt for the Wilder People and Deadpool 2, and then recent or current popular star, the Kid Leroy, who is a recent artist. But the biggest thing here that really jumped out to me was the mom, who I recognized, and then it instantly made me feel extraordinarily old that Alicia Silverstone is the mom in this movie. Now, if you aren't familiar with Alicia Silverstone, she was the teenage heartthrob from the 2000s. I mean, she had all the young boys' hearts going pitter-patter, for sure. So with her being the mom, I felt like a geriatric old man. So there's that. But this movie, essentially, which I just pulled up the still for a second ago, is basically This Is the End mixed with Superbad, and that's not a bad idea, especially paired with the concept of what if Y2K really happened, because that's a brilliant idea. So many of us that grew up during that time really thought that things were going to go absolutely sideways. I remember where I was that New Year's Eve, and then I remember the next day honestly being a little bit disappointed that something absolutely crazy didn't happen, and all that really happened was a couple of like casino machines went down or something, some slot machines. It was very underwhelming. And this movie takes it to the next degree and is like, but what if it wasn't underwhelming and it was awesome and it was in a gory horror movie? The problem is that director Kyle Mooney, this was a giant miss by him. This is Kyle Mooney's directorial debut, and I wasn't really familiar with him and his work, but then I started digging through it all, and when I saw the SNL thing right here and found out that that's really where he kind of got his start, everything started to click into place, because if you've seen SNL over the past probably, honestly, 15 plus years, you know that it's just not that great. And this movie really just kind of feels like it comes from that school of thought. Now, I don't want to completely crap on this movie. For about the first 20 or 30 minutes, I was quite in it. And I don't know if that's fully from like the dopamine nostalgia hits that they were giving me from the wall-to-wall music and lingo and mannerisms and clothes and just all of it. it worked for the first 20 or 30 minutes. And I was really in. I was ready for it to happen. And then when the movie really gets rolling to the horror bits, I was like, holy crap, they're going full rated R gore. People are murdered, dying. It is wild. But then it just kind of falls apart, and this movie turns into the cheesiest, cringiest, most terribly written thing that I could have concocted. It's just, I'm not very pleased with it, which is a real bummer. And honestly, I was really curious as well about Rachel Zegler, because we've been hearing her name a lot. I haven't seen her in anything and was curious if she could show up. And now it might have been due to this terrible script, but she didn't do a very good job at all. But neither did really almost anyone else whatsoever. So I think a lot of this kind of falls on the direction and the writing, and it just really does fall apart, becomes extremely cliche and uninteresting and just cheesy, just really cheesy and lame and trashy in all of the worst ways. And it made me kind of surprised that A24 stayed attached to this movie, because they tend to be really connected to a lot of more highbrow indie stuff that's more in the artsy fartsy realm, and maybe they're trying to branch out a little bit, but this movie isn't it. This wasn't the move. So I cannot recommend going to see Y2K. I did not have very much fun after that first 30 minutes, and I find it to be a real shame because of such the interesting concept that was with this movie and what they could have done with it, and even some of the people that were in it. There are some good actors here, but the performances and just everything that they got out of them was not there, and I will forget this movie in like a minute and a half. So I do not recommend Y2K, guys. I'm really sorry. I thought this was going to be awesome. I thought it was going to be fun, and I really just don't even have a whole lot to say about it. It just wasn't anything very memorable, and by the time we got to the very end of it, I was just ready for it to be over, which is a real shame. And if you were wondering, as far as a Criticless scale goes, this is at the very highest, probably a low bogus. I'll probably consider it a little more when I drop my review soon, but I mean, this is filled with graphic language, and the violence is pretty high. There's not really any sexuality or nudity, not a whole lot of political bias either, really, but it's just, it does kind of start to play it safe after a point. It's this weird thing that we've been seeing of late, where these modern filmmakers are trying to play it safe while being edgy in our modern current culture, and it's just not working. You either go all or nothing, and that's the problem here, is that this movie just kind of straddles that line, but also is just the cheesiness factor and all of that as well just did not work. So I think that's it, guys, for Y2K. I would just say maybe catch it at home, put it on while you're like doing the laundry, maybe, if you're just interested. Maybe watch that first 30, but outside of that, I'm ready for a real nostalgia film from the 2000s to hit, and I'm honestly just a little bummed that such a cool idea was wasted on this movie. But I will be back again next week for the news and some reviews. I hope everybody has a fantastic weekend, and I will be back soon. Later.